All seriousness, we go back a long time. We have very common backgrounds. We both grew up in the state of Michigan. We're products of great music education in the state. Scott's dad was a great band director on the west side. We both, we've worked together way before we had our two jobs that are so close. And I think the two of us are also unique in that we sort of proudly still wave the flag of our state, so to speak, where a lot of our counterparts have gone wherever. Right. So is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And this guy's band is the one that I always have to make sure we have our best show when they show up, because
well, I was going to say
amazing.
That's if you were speaking to the group today, or that's a common thread. We're not involved in the bitter rivalry. We're when the other school is involved, it's your turn to do your best thing, to bring your A game. That's how it always works.
Right.
I assume the people that wear the pads feel the same way. There's usually a little more energy.
A little bit. There's a little more tackling that happens.
There's a little
very
hitting.
Few tackling here.
Whereas our bands combine, and it's this love fest of let's play music together.
Remember, the first time we combined at halftime to have the two bands play together, I remember, I think, was it at our place or your place? Our place.
It was at your place.
So we finished our halftime. The Spartans were on the sideline, and then they rushed the field to join us.
To get into our combined spots.
Yeah, to
we
mix
had to mesh.
up, and every green,
we had
blue,
to mesh
green,
in,
blue.
and there was a hush over the stadium like, oh, they're attacking!
What's going to happen here?
They're going to kill our band! And then, then this perfect formation of, 650 people snaps together like that, and we played America the Beautiful.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
This is the planning stage. This is a great time of year where, in fact, you're going back to school right now to work with your design committee. Is that correct? And I have one of those meetings tomorrow morning. It's a standard formula in our business where you lay things out. We have 7 home games. You have to figure out how to get to the whole audience. We have this group that wants to hear this kind of music, and the student section needs a little of this. And I don't think our jobs are profound in that regard. We need to entertain a football crowd, right?
Right, absolutely. And this is the time of season to put them all together and try to anticipate what everybody's going to like. Try to please everybody at the same time, and it's impossible.
I like to say you drop about 50 ideas in a funnel, and then you got to come up with 7 that are going to work for everybody.
Yep.
Well, one final question. Can you tell me a little bit about these Leslie boys that seem to be musically inclined?
You mean the famous Graham and Dale brothers duo? Well, Graham was my guy, and Graham was in the famous Michigan State drum line. He played the number 1 bass, and he was one of the few bass drummers to become the section leader, and that's a big deal. So his peers really validated him, and he's one of the great percussionists that we've ever had, but he's one of the great Spartans that we've ever had. And you can talk about Dale.
And Drew came. Drew was there before I got there, but from what I hear from Dale, he was amazing.
Yes.
So, I hear about Drew, and I've heard that he was a tremendous member of the Michigan Marching Band. I was a trombone player as well as Drew, so we're kins.
Okay, thanks.
And it's also nice to have so many Spartans here.
Whoa.
Am I making up for the earlier faux pas?
Not enough.
Not enough? Oh well. And I did pay my fine. So now I'd like to introduce our Spartan-in-Chief, Jim Moretta, who will introduce our speaker.
That's a good label for him.
Thank you, President Ann. There are just so many connections here. I sort of alluded to some of them when I was introducing the Westermans, but there's lots of things I could talk about in the way of small world connections. But I think I will short circuit that and just simply explain that our speaker today, John Madden, is really here through Dale Leslie's invitation, and I think all of you know that Dale's son Graham was in the Spartan percussion line, drum line, for 4 years and played under John, and just marveled at the experience and made the connection. And so Dale thought it would be timely. As you know, we've had Scott Boerma come and speak to the club twice, sort of as giving us a preview of the U of M marching band season. And so I don't know if this is point and counterpoint, John, but in any event, John joined the music faculty at Michigan State in 1989, and he has been the director of the marching band and also the director of the symphony band there. Since that time, he mentioned that he enjoys getting out and speaking to clubs, so this is a comfortable forum for John, and we're really pleased that you're here. So welcome to Ann Arbor, John Madden.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, Kiwanians. Great to be here. The last time I was this close to the big house, we were coming through on a bus to adoring fans all through the city waving and greeting us nicely. This is a tough town to wear a green uniform in on that day. However, we all live in the great rivalry of that game. I think we do. If you've attended the Michigan versus Michigan State football game in the last 21 years, raise your hand, please. Okay, well then you've seen my work then. So I've had the privilege of being the director of the Spartan Marching Band for 21 years now, and it really is every day living kind of a dream job for me. I grew up in southeastern Michigan. I went to West Bloomfield High School. Talk about the other small world connections. When I was a student, a high school band student in West Bloomfield, I attended Interlochen for 2 summers. And I was the principal trumpet in the Michigan Youth Band right here on campus for 2 years. And I grew up kind of a go blue kid. And like a lot of us who see the light and end up at Michigan State. And actually that was a life-changing experience. For those of you that know the music scene at U of M, you know some of the very famous world-class conductors that have been there. And for a short period of time, there was a man named Carl St. Clair on the faculty at the University of Michigan. And he was the conductor of the Michigan Youth Band. And it changed my life. It's one of those things that I stay in touch with him today. He's the conductor of the Pacific Symphony, which is in San Diego. He was discovered at Tanglewood. That's why he left the University of Michigan. He was discovered by Seiji Ozawa at Tanglewood, and he became the associate conductor of the Boston Symphony before he went out into his own world of conducting. Upon high school graduation, I went to Michigan State as an undergrad. It was the right fit for me, and we were talking about his late father and how I had a wonderful experience auditioning for Leonard Moretta at Western Michigan, and my school choices were Michigan, Michigan State, and Western. Like a lot of kids in our area who grow up and look at the great opportunities to go to school in state. So that was my path, and then I finished my degree in music education, and I had a very enticing grad assistantship offer, and I went out to Kansas and served as a grad assistant at Wichita State University, where I had great real-life experience. I functioned as one of the band directors there, and was able to, upon completion of my master's degree, earn a college job at Rutgers University. So I taught for 2 years on the faculty at Rutgers, which, as you know, is a big state school of New Jersey. One of these schools that's in this potential Big Ten expansion stuff that we're hearing a little bit about right now. A very, very fine school, and my wife and I were newlyweds and lived in the shadows of New York City, and it was a great way to start our life together. And I was at Rutgers for 2 years, and folks that were close to me at Michigan State, my mentors, the people I stayed in touch with, professionally called and said there's going to be a job open. The director of our current director is leaving to pursue other things, and would you be interested in it? And I remember kind of covering the phone and going, well, can I get back to you? Can I think about that a little bit? That's where the dream job thing came, and it all worked out. And 21 years later, here I am still. So I have 2 children, a senior in high school and a 9th grader, both girls. My senior is graduating in a week from Okemos High School. She'll be attending Michigan State. She's going into the College of Natural Science to do a pre-dental degree program, which means for dental school, you know where she'll end up. Right here, right across the street. That would be a wonderful hope. And so we live in Okemos, and we live large in our Spartan way of life there. My father-in-law is a Kiwanian. I've spoke to Kiwanis clubs in East Lansing and Grand Rapids, and I've just had the most delightful time being a part of your meeting this afternoon. Kiwanians are people of service. They give tremendously of themselves and of your time and of your resources, and that's so admirable, and it sets an incredible example to the rest of your community. And I know you know that, and maybe by way of you getting to know me a little bit more and a little bit more about my band, I would like to share one story of service with you. In Lansing, Michigan, our big mid-Michigan regional hospital is Sparrow Hospital. And Sparrow is like all hospitals, has to go out and find its own money. And Michigan State University coaches for many, many years have been involved in a Coaches for Kids miracle network kind of way of life. And I know that happens here, and I know that happens all throughout Southeast Michigan, and it's an important form of stewardship to be able to volunteer and give time to help those kind of pursuits. Well, when I got to the point where I felt like I had been at MSU a long time and had been meeting a lot of these folks and getting involved in the community a little bit more, there's a particular guy who I was friends with who happens to be the NBC sports anchor up in Lansing, Tim Stout. He's a very vocal leader in charitable work, and the Coaches for Kids Sparrow thing is a big thing to him. And so I said, hey, in passing, if there's any way I could ever help with this, let me know. I know that it's not the same thing. Coaches can have their athletes go to the hospital and they can visit and these kinds of things, but if there's any way I and the band can help, please let us know. So we put our heads together and we created a Spartan Marching Band for Kids benefit concert, which is now going on about its 7th straight year. And what the Benefit for Kids concert does is I take 100 students out of the 300 in the Spartan Marching Band on the 2nd or 3rd Sunday of the fall. On one 2-hour rehearsal, I pass out about 15 patriotic charts and some of the traditional music that we play, and it's a very go green kind of crowd, and we actually do it in the backyard of Tim Stout's house. And we create an old-fashioned concert in the park, very patriotic. And I'm sure it's a pretty expensive ticket. You buy tables of 8 or 10, and we do about a 3-hour benefit concert. Well, it started as the band playing, and now it's every head coach at Michigan State, the band, we're there for 3 hours, the president, the provost, and the greatest joy to me is that those 100 students at Michigan State learn something about community and stewardship and giving. Because giving doesn't always just have to be from your wallet. Giving can be your time, which you know a lot about in this room. Giving can be your time, and it can be your talent. So we're taking 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, we're sitting them down for 3 hours, they have no idea what they're going to get themselves into. They sit down in a concert formation, and I conduct them, and we entertain the audience, and we play patriotic songs and service medleys and Michigan State music, and they're rock stars. I mean, they're absolute celebrities, and they can't really comprehend what has happened. The spotlight has gone to band students. And society that's not how it is. It's about the quarterback and the guy that scored the winning three-point shot. I mean, the satellite trucks don't come cover band rehearsal. The satellite trucks want to talk about everything that's going on in athletics, and yet we love our collegiate athletics because of the atmosphere that's created for many things, but because of the band, right? Because the band is an important part of how that works. So I love to stand up in front of the students, and it would be folks like you sitting and supporting them with me that say, thanks for your time. Thanks for giving a few hours on a Sunday to, through your talent, entertain some folks who put the money in the bucket. And so we've been raising about $30,000 each benefit concert. And so we're sending that right to the hospital, and then the hospital folks in development have agreed to split that with us, and the other half comes back to our coffers to help pay for a road trip because they're so expensive. To take the band from Ann Arbor to East Lansing or vice versa, that's almost a $20,000 trip these days. 7 buses and a semi-truck and a couple of box lunches at $8 a head. It's expensive. And yet we would never not go to the other school. It's just one of those really important things. So I wanted you to learn a little bit more about me and our students the next time you see them in that green uniform. They're good kids. They're really great kids. The rivalry has never really been about the musicians. It really hasn't. If the guys that wear the pads, I'm pretty sure, can't wait to hit each other. But the musicians have really enjoyed our time together, so maybe a little proof in that. Before the meeting here, Scott Boerma, the Michigan band director, who's a really good friend. I mean, not just because I met him 2 years ago when he got the job, but we grew up in this state together as musicians. We're products of music education in the state of Michigan. We saw each other at all state bands and honor bands, and we both marched in drum and bugle corps together. And before he came to U of M, I knew where he was when he was at EMU and Novi High School and in his path, and we really truly are very, very good friends. All of the faculty in our band department and the faculty in the Michigan band department feel that way. We go to each other's concerts, we support each other, we talk to each other on the phone all the time. There really is an incredible respect and cooperation, and I know you know that, between the two schools. But our band departments really have lived closely with each other. A couple other maybe fun facts that maybe you didn't know. There, of course, historically are the two famous directors, and you're going to know these names. Revelli, right? And Falcone, these two Italian guys. Now, I'm pretty sure in their era the rivalry might have been between the bands, with those two guys, from what I've heard. Now, Falcone came to Michigan State in 1927 and left in 67, 40 years at Michigan State. Revelli, I believe, came to Michigan in 1935 and finished in 71. Those long tenures of the two most famous band conductors in the country, the two men that influenced the rest of the country, there are some legendary stories. I mean, legendary stories. In today's world of a Big Ten football game and all the things that go on, Scott and I will get our marching orders that for this halftime show, when we come to Ann Arbor, we'll get 6 minutes on and off for halftime. And they will get 6 or 7 minutes on and off. And then by Big Ten rules, we have to communicate with each other, and there has to be a gentleman's agreement that we're going to stick to the timing, because if the bands are on the field too long, you know what happens. Here come the teams out of the tunnel, and the band is still on the field. I'm not sure that's what the head coach wants to see. When it's time, the head coach, the football team gets the field with 4 minutes left on the 20-minute countdown clock. I have had a couple of occasions where, because of things out of one's control, we might have been on the field when we weren't supposed to be. I don't think it was a Michigan State game. I know during a Michigan State-Ohio State game, Ohio State told me their show was 7 minutes. It ended up being like 9. Oh. And that made me look bad. And I remember that's when George Perlis was the coach of Michigan State. And I'm on the ladder, and here's the team, and the teams are out. I still have a whole number to go, and the teams are out, and there's a referee standing at the bottom of the ladder, and he's looking up at me going, I went, it's not my fault. I'm sorry. And I'm trying to debate with the referee from an 8-foot ladder, and the band's playing whatever we're playing. I said, it's not my fault. And he goes, and remember, the band is playing full bore. I mean, sound is pouring over me, and he goes, don't worry. I'm not going to penalize the band. And I go, whew. He goes, pause. I'm going to penalize George. And I went, oh no. So I started off the field. Let's go off the field. You don't have any control because the kids are all kind of in lockdown mode. They've prepared the show. They know what they're doing. But the legendary story is that Revelli and Falcone would claim to have said, yes, our show is 7 minutes. And so if it were in East Lansing, the visiting band will go first. So Revelli's on the ladder, and the band is playing, and the clock is counting down, and now it's past the 7-minute mark, and it's going into the 8-minute mark, and Falcone's getting upset, and there were pictures of Falcone pulling Revelli off the ladder, pulling him down off the ladder. So how true those are. They're great sort of pass it down the tradition stories, but there truly has been great cooperation. I'll say this in spirit of the rivalry as well. Scott and I were talking about this when he came in. There is no doubt in my mind that, by the way, neither the Michigan State nor Michigan Band have as one of their iconic expressions that we are the, quote, best band in the land. There are some other bands in the Big Ten that have that label. And the Michigan and Michigan State bands have great confidence in knowing that if you have to say that, you're probably not it. And what comes with that between the two schools that have influenced each other for so long is that when it's that game, when it's that day, it's the A game for the other school's band. In other words, when we come to Michigan, we know we're going to be with the Great Michigan Band, and we're influenced by the Great Michigan Band, and we're going to be our best. We're going to program our best stuff. Our kids are going to be at their highest level of concentration, and it's going to be our A game. And Scott and I were talking about this when the Michigan Band comes to East Lansing, it's exactly the same thing, and that has been a shared sentiment for so many years. I see that only as a positive, and it's like anything else in life. When there is you can call it when the pressure's on, or when the environment inspires you to be at your best, or the deadline that's created has said, now we have to produce, that's usually when we find ourselves giving our best effort. That happens in every walk of life. So there's a real tangible life skill learned from what some see as a bitter rivalry and I see as, aren't we lucky to be part of one of the greatest traditions in the country, that is collegiate football. We're part of the pageantry of it. We're part of what everybody who would attend would agree is what makes it a lot better than just going to a professional football game. Whatever the names in the back of the jerseys are, sort of doesn't matter year after year after year, but we're so accustomed to these great traditions in this state. And I think the last thing I'll leave you with is how more similar the two bands are than they are different. Really, the style of the uniform is very much the same. Different insignia. The style of marching and show design. There are intricate things that are very different, but by and large, the concept is the same. There are the same kinds of students. Mostly non-music majors populate these two college marching bands. Both bands have a small percentage of music majors, and I can tell you from experience, those music majors become the upper crust, and it also becomes a great methods class for those music majors that are going to go on, like I did and Scott did, to become band directors, to go out and teach in public school music. So I was delighted to have the invitation to come down, and I was excited to be with Kiwanians, but specifically in Ann Arbor, because I know where the loyalties are primarily. I understand that. I know what it's like when you go to a Kiwanis Club meeting in East Lansing. It's mostly Michigan State folks. But it's universal how much we appreciate our traditions in these bands, and I know there's probably some questions out there. I'd love to answer those.
Dave?
Steve, you speak so highly of Scott and the Michigan Band. At your 3-hour concert there, do you play the Victors?
You know, I have a funny story about the Victors. You set me up for this. Now I'm going to go with it. There are these two fighter pilots, and they were shot down. And one was a Michigan grad, and one was a Michigan State grad. And unfortunately, they were going to be executed. So the executioner said, well, you each get to have one last pleasure, maybe a meal, any final request. And the Michigan grad said, you know, I'd just like to hear the world's greatest fight song, The Victors, just one more time. The executioner said, we can accommodate that. Turned to the Michigan State grad, and they said, you know, you have one request. Anything we can accommodate? Shoot me first.
The greatest band in the land wouldn't happen to be Ohio State.
I don't know what they call themselves. It could be, though. But you know what? In all seriousness, they're a great band. They really are. They really are.
I'm just saying, for the former superintendent of schools, the best group we ever had in any school district is the band.
Absolutely.
All the boosters, full of goodwill.
Yep.
Can you read?
And I was the principal in West Bloomfield.
He was saying about how all those years as superintendent, the best group, the most behaved, the most disciplined, the most respectful, it's always the band. And the FFA. And those are cool jackets too. I love those FFA jackets.
Wouldn't be the same without the band.
Thank you
very much. I just wanted to ask additional Michigan programs that come back at halftime at the football games every other year, every year. Do you have things like that? We do.
And I know what you're saying. We have a bit. One of the big differences in our band is this. The ROTC band grew into what we still today call our band. The roots of it as a military band, the style of the officer's hat and the epaulets, and there's a hair code and there's no makeup, and there's a lot of military bearing to the uniform. So the shows were almost, for most part, very traditional, a lot of precision, and yet we have a tradition for the last game of the year, which had, for a long time, it didn't really mean anything, unlike the Michigan-Ohio State game, which means everything at the end of the year. We didn't have a rivalry game at the end of the year. We do now at Penn State. So it wasn't a real high-profile game, but that's kind of our comedy, let our hair down kind of show. We've done some crazy, zany things you'd look at and go, well, that's not the precision military Spartan marching band that we know, but it is one of our, like you asked, one of our traditions.
Yes, I'm asking this because I have a freshman who is will be a freshman in the fall.
Wonderful.
In music education.
Terrific.
So he wants to be in your band, but his concert instrument is the flute. So can you speak a little bit
Sure.
to the fact that you don't carry those instruments in the marching band,
Right.
and talk to us about, does everybody march every week, and how do you select your drum major?
Sure. Great questions. We just selected our new drum major just this Saturday, just this past day. You have to march in the band at least 1 year to be considered to audition for drum major. We had those auditions, so we'll have a pair of drum majors next year. And
Who?
yeah, I can. His name is Simon Holowico. He's from Grand Ledge, and he will partner up with Rachel Linsmeyer, who's from Okemos, who will be a fifth-year senior, and Simon is a third-year trumpet player, and so yeah, absolutely. And the No Flutes, No Clarinets is a product of when Spartan Stadium added upper decks, I believe in the 40s or 50s, probably the 50s. Falcone and his assistant Moffat determined that the instrumentation needed to be brassier, and everybody who played a flute or clarinet in the band at that time was just given a saxophone to play, because every flute player plays a saxophone. It's a woodwind double. So we have 36 alto saxes and 20 tenor saxes in the band. I would say 50% of all of those students play a flute, a clarinet, or an oboe, or a bassoon. So the Ohio State band is an all-brass band. The Michigan band has a full range of brass woodwind instruments. The Spartan Marching Band is only brass with saxophones. So any flute music major can play saxophone in the band. So we just need to communicate if he would like to do that. Absolutely. Yeah. But, it's a standard woodwind double. Professional flute player plays a sax and vice versa. That's a good, solid double. Yeah.
Other questions?
You indicated the cost of taking the band from Lansing to Michigan.
Right.
I assume costs of going to other schools are even greater, greater distance.
Yep.
Where does all the funding for that come from? Or do you not get a chance to get out of East Lansing and go to other schools?
Well, our other rivalry game is Notre Dame, and so we always go down and back to South Bend, or we always go down and back to Ann Arbor. They happen to always be on other opposite years, so we wouldn't have to do both of those in the same year. Our budget, our operational budget, is the source is intercollegiate athletics. So athletics supplies us the lump sum that I have to budget one trip. And all of our other operational expenses. If we were to go on a second trip, it would have to be a fundraise trip, which the Sparrow Hospital fundraising concert is helping us with. For example, Michigan State plays a game in Ford Field this fall, which we'll use that money to go to Ford Field, because it won't take precedent over the budgeted trip. So athletics funds, and it is the future. I mean, we all need to find ways to get more money in the coffers so we can do some of these things. Bowl game travel is a whole different thing. Bowl games, I think every Division I football school that goes to a bowl would like to be able to pay for its bowl football, travel party, band within the allotted money that they receive from the bowl. That's getting harder and harder to do for northern tier schools who land in bowls that only pay $750,000. You got to take the whole crew down to Texas. It's easier to slide over from, Lubbock to San Antonio when you're from Texas. It's harder to get us down there. So it's a real dichotomy there in that. And that's why I think you see some of the Big Ten bowls realigning for travel. We're going to see more bowls in Florida now in the Big Ten. There's been a shift where we're picking up the Gator Bowl again in Jacksonville. There's a lot of that people are talking about in terms of how difficult it is to pay for that.
One more question?
Is there any chance that more band time can be included in halftime for those of us who watch it on TV?
Great question. Great question. For 21 years at Michigan State, my first 2 or 3, ABC would come to town with their trucks, and I would talk to a person from clearance and copyright, and they'd want the information about how long the show was and what tunes and what's the copyright information. In other words, they were making a commitment to put us on TV and put it in the scripted part of the show. Now it's every halftime minute is taken up with some sponsor paying for talking heads to talk about scores around the country and updates, and it's harder and harder, and it's more difficult. And of course, back in the era when maybe there was only one high-profile game on TV, in the 60s, let's say, you'd get, as part of the package, the whole halftime show. And bands like Michigan and Michigan State and Ohio State became famous because pretty much they were going to be one of those high-profile football games. So it's a harder and harder argument to deal with. Bowl games are doing a pretty good job with it, but it depends on the bowl. But it's about advertising dollars, music, copyright, clearance. And so the short answer is, unfortunately, it's getting more and more difficult. But I think if people made noise, there might be a difference. Yeah.
What about the Big Ten Network?
We love the Big Ten Network. I don't know that they're sort of following suit. And we're involved with meetings with them in Chicago now, and we're starting to kind of break them down. I think we have a good shot at the Big Ten Network streaming live internet video. And that may happen this year, where you could just log on and literally, the game's going on, you want to see what the bands are doing at halftime, you could see what's going on the web.
Thank you so much.
I know we're out of time.
We have for you. We have something for you that we're sure you're going to proudly display in your office in East Lansing.
I will.
A mug from the Kiwanis Club of Ann Arbor. Thank you so much. I'm sure there'll probably be a few people who have some questions afterwards if you can stay.
Happy to visit.
All right.
And that's it from the Ann Arbor Kiwanis Club. John T. Madden giving a great speech here towards a packed house in beautiful Ann Arbor, Michigan. And here is the former superintendent of the Ann Arbor Public Schools, W. Scott Westerman, Jr.
And I'm arguing for more halftime band time, whether the U of M or MSU, because they deserve to be seen by millions.
Go blue and go green.